Welcome back. This is a chiropractic algebra mathematical formula to drive practice success. And as we've just been talking about on kind of the shares, what we focus on and how we see it will ultimately drive what we create. So this is the corner of 3rd and Brady in Davenport, Iowa, circa 1895. And in this 3rd floor window, supposedly Harvey got the adjustment. And when he stood up, the comment was, "I can hear the wagons in the street, I can hear the wagons in the street, I can hear the wagons in the street." Except that what isn't really well known is that Dee Dee then told Harvey, "That'll be $5, please." And Harvey said, "Huh?" Anyhow, that's how I like to introduce. And, as an introductory piece, if those clients on the line will permit me 30 seconds of self-promotion. I'm Dr. Lee Newman. I'm a 2nd-generation chiropractor. I'll be 50 in February of 2013. So I've been around it for essentially 50 years, well over half my life in active practice, graduated from Life University in Atlanta in 1986. So I'm in my 27th year of practice. Had a 500-plus new patient, 10,000 visit a year practice for well over 2 decades. Have now been personally owner and backer and supporter and financer and clinic manager of 14 offices, dozens of associates, 17 years of consulting, and hundreds of clients. This was the main office for 23 years, right on the south side of Pittsburgh. I guess that picture is a little blurry, but that's the way it looked. So as the whole business of chiropractic, to me, is driven by this huge need. So as B.J. Palmer, for those of you maybe that have never read B.J., I'd encourage you to go check him out. He had a very distinct style and message. One of my favorite B.J. stories is the story of small things and big things, right? Where basically the one subluxation to one person is not such a big thing until you start to multiply that one person by how many people in the community and how many communities in a city and how many cities in a state and how many states in a country and how many countries on the planet. So that one subluxation is the key. And as we have developed into private practice, excuse me, the business is driven by that transaction. So that for me, in my own little private practice, moving to Spokane and opening up my own chiropractic practice, my vision is to be able to serve as many patients as I possibly can because they're all walking around with it, right? Most of them don't even know that they have it, and it's majorly negatively affecting their lives. And if we don't go impose ourselves on our communities, in each of our communities where we are, we're never going to gain on it. On the other hand, that's what's always made us safe, our strong, viable individual practices. So in absence of any leadership, we just go down to the grassroots and build a big, strong, successful practice. And if you have a bunch of everything from everywhere and everybody, you're insulated from any shift in the market. So the whole business of a chiropractic practice is driven by a big mission and need. It is Gratitude Month. Take a second to show some gratitude to Dr. Shawn Dill, 95 Logan graduate, kind of set up Costa Rica. There was no law there, and he went and established it. Has a series of offices on the West Coast, I guess nationwide, upper cervical offices called the Specific. And it's this Kaizen concept of just small, gradual improvements that he shared with me that I really liked. So thank him for that. So my overall pitch to the practicing chiropractor is we need to have 4 strong legs of the stool. Used to say 3, but I actually added the 4th one. So if any of these legs were to be cut out from the stool, it would be difficult to balance the whole thing, and in fact, ultimately, we would tip over. So one is that we need to help people, lots of people. So as I just said, it's all driven by the clinical need of what's going on in the world around us. Certainly, I could spend the rest of the hour talking about like how upside down the society is, where, somebody clearly has a clinical problem and they're looking for the next chemical answer. Not even to get to an innate level, which is a whole nother conversation to have, right? But 2, we have to do it in a way that's going to be fun and organized. So, for those of you that are newly out of school, I got a new employee doc in New York City now. He graduated in June. So he's going to practice for the next 30 to 50 years, right? So, it needs to be fun. Who wants to have treachery for 30 to 50 years? It needs to be organized. It needs to be almost game-like for those of you that enjoy playing games, so that going to practice is a fun part of your day. So I was in a meeting, and there was a guy that was kind of explaining what was going on, both his business. His largest client was threatening to quit him, and at the same time, he had separated from his wife, but they were still living in the same physical place. So, it wasn't fun at work. It wasn't fun at home. Where's their refuge? So we want to make sure that the practice is like, you look forward to being in those four walls. Most super successful chiropractors hang out in their offices. So it's not the joke, what does a mailman do what does a mailman do on his day off? He goes for a walk, right? So in addition to that, though, the business needs to be strong. It needs to be profitable. So, and you need to see the strength of the business, and the encouraging thing is that in 2013 and going forward, still, as a small business, the chiropractic business model is super strong. I'm going to talk about a $50 collected per visit, doing $200 a week, collecting $500,000. The owner doctor makes probably $300,000 or more, give or take. Highly viable business model. But even more than that, and this is the fourth leg that I added, I think it's really important. We talked about this the last couple of weeks, is we're going to have our hands on a lot of money over the next several decades. And it's to make sure that we take care and we become good stewards of money, and that we personally accumulate the wealth that we seek. So just like the practice is going to be designed by what vision you put on it, ultimately how much money you end up with is going to be driven by kind of the decision that you have on an ongoing basis. So right now, I would ask you, how much money are you going to have by what year? How much X by Y? And, to a great extent, your answer will drive that. So those are the four legs of the stool. So as we also talked about, our thoughts are going to guide what we attract. So if we have 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day, the more that we can have immersed in the things that we're focused on, the more that it will drive it. So we want to be focused on the things that build a chiropractic practice. And then ultimately what happens is, after you kind of train for a while, one day you wake up and you've become a successful doctor. And this is my picture of this that I like to share. This is Captain Cook on the big island of Hawaii. And across this bay, what you don't see here is kind of the land side on this southern part of the peninsula or the bay. This little creature right here, if you were able to zoom in on it, it's a miniature. It looks like the Washington Memorial in Washington, D.C., but it's actually a tiny obelisk like that, and it's a tribute to Captain Cook. And the only reason it's of real significance to me is that this was the highlight of swim camp, where I officially became a swimmer. Mute that puppy. There we go. So I swam out with my pod. We climb out, check out the memorial, and somehow, I got separated, and I was forced to swim back by myself. And as you can see, there is no way out. So you either swim back or, you don't swim back. It was in the swimming back by myself. It was a little over a mile. For those of you that don't swim, a mile of open water swimming is rugged. You can basically see a foot to your side and in front of you for a millisecond every now and then. So if you don't have the skills, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But in doing this, it was self-determined that, I guess I'm a swimmer. Similarly, when you build a 200-visit-a-week practice, you're a 200-visit-a-week practice. And all of that is driven around this basic formula. So I want to make sure I got tons of you on the call now, and this is an introductory, my overall view of driving a chiropractic practice. So one is there's this big, huge need. Everybody needs us. Nobody knows it. So now to run the business, here we go. Collections equals new patients times PVA times OVA. So again, collections equals your new patients times your patient visit average times your office visit average. So just to define, right? So one more time, collections equals your new patients times your patient visit average times your office visit average, right? So there's the formula. So to define the terms, so first is new patients. In my system, you're only a new patient once. You show up, you sign in, you hand in or fill out new patient paperwork, you're taken back, we consult with you, you're a new patient that day, that's the day you're a new patient. In the formula, I like this formula will hold true. So here's when we get involved with math, a huge percentage of people, have given up their math skills and just ceded and just they've accepted the fact, oh, I'm bad with math. If that's you, and I told somebody this week about this, if that's you and you aspire to own a business, to own your own practice, to be in a small business, I would strongly encourage you to go online and enroll in basic algebra and basic mathematical courses and spend, even 30 minutes a week or an hour a week improving your math skills. It is learnable. Whoever told you that you couldn't do it, I'm here to tell you that you're allowed to give that up and that your math skills can be good enough to drive a business. So one of the things, this equation is true for any period of time. The longer that we look at it, the more accurate it will be. Certainly if we used year-to-date numbers, right now being in the second week of October, if your practice was open the whole year, they are accurate numbers. So what I like to do, though, is to talk about the monthly measures. So when we talk about new patients, I'm looking for a monthly average. So if you were to take, after 10 months, after October, your year-to-date new patients, if it was 300, and then divide it by 10, then you'd have 30, an average of 30 a month. Second is patient visit average. Patient visit average, it's a statistical measurement. It's a division, total visits divided by total new patients. But what it tells us is how many visits does your average patient get in their lifetime? So this is another aspect that can confuse some people over the math. Like if I only have one new patient this week, then how can that tell me what Harry, who's been coming in for 30 years, how many visits he gets? Well, it's over the longer scale the math works out. So if you were to average 30 new patients every month, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, and then you had, 900 visits every month, 900, 900, 900, you divide the two, and on average, every new patient's going to get 30 visits. So again, when I have my PVA conversation, what should drive this is the clinical need. If, I believe that all of us, certainly on this call, can make a clinical argument for at least 25. So if you're not at 25, I would have it on my short list to get to 25. And, if you're at 10 or if you're at 15, if you're at 12 and a half, so here's another mathematical feature. There's a word for it. I don't even know what it is, but whatever percentage that you raise any of these three numbers, new patients or PVA or OVA, the overall collections will raise by the same percent. So if you have a PVA of 10 and you grow it to 20, your practice will have doubled. You will do twice the money. So that's an interesting feature. Third is office visit average. So this is your total collections from all sources divided by total visits, and it's what you collect per visit. So it's an average of what you collect per visit. So this is, one of my favorite teaching charts. And, for most of you on the West Coast on this call, right, these numbers are actually going to be too low. So this is a $40 to $50 office call. So if every practice is somewhere on this chart. It could be that you're above the first level that I put in here, and I could put in a, 10 and 10, and it's 100 visits a week, and it's like 100 visits a month and a 20 visit a week practice. But you're somewhere on this chart. So it requires a considerable amount of work to get to 20 new patients a month and a retention of 20, or any combination to get to 400 visits a month. So it's like 92 a week. I know a bunch of you on this call are right there right now. So at $40 to $50 collected, it's like a $220,000 practice. But here is another amazing thing. This is math and taxes combined together. So if you were to grow from 20 to 20 to 30 to 30, right? So not only do you collect double the money, so you go from 240 to 500, but you actually quadruple what the practice owner makes, because the last half is almost solely no additional overhead. So the overhead on the $500,000 practice might be $30,000 or $40,000 more than the overhead on the $240,000 practice. So you might have an additional employee or half an employee. You might have some additional space or some additional marketing and advertising money. But, you know, we're talking about an additional $250,000. Even if you spent $100,000 to do it, it's, you know, 70% profit. So you can quadruple your end, which is why 200 a week is my magic number. It's why I encourage every chiro that I speak with to want it in their heart of hearts. A, it's the proper number in terms of clinical service. Again, I'd send you back to your last 10 case files, take a good look, and see like who doesn't need what it is that you have. Second, it's the right return on investment. If we're going to show up and work this hard, and it's a lot of work, right, let's get the payoff. So let's service a bunch of people, be real strong and profitable, then be good stewards of the money. So that's my conversation. So your first assignment, everybody on this call, right? One, algebra, identify where you are. Where are you on this chart? How many new a month? What PVA? What OVA? What's your monthly or annual collections? Two, decide where it is that you want to be. So, you know, if you want to focus on 90 days, where do you want to be in 90 days? If you want to focus on New Year's Eve of 2013 going into 14, a little over 12 months from now, focus on that. If you wanted to focus a little bit further out on this big giant leap, you could do that. But, you know, get real clear on what it is that you want, and then just define the gap between the two, because typically it's not that much. And again, you know, if you're super kind of weak in one area, so if you had 10 new patients and a retention of 40 and $50 or $60 collected, if you were to do everything the same, you could double your new patients relatively easily from 10 to 20, and it would double the practice. So defining the gap is really powerful because you can see, you know, business-wise, this huge shift on just closing the numbers a little bit. And then once we have the gap, so I'm 8 new patients and 5 visits for retention and $7 a visit collected away from where I want to be. So now develop a plan for each of those. So this is a throw-in. This is a frat picture from 1985. This was the day I was elected. I kind of throw that in as a humorous picture. But this is the way the plan looks, right? So this is an old format that I use, but I still like it. So here's the formula. Collections equals new patients times PVA times OVA. $500,000 in collections, 8 new patients a week, a retention of 25, $50 collected. I think that every single doc in this call can achieve that if, like, that's where their heart of hearts is. So now, what's our plan? How are we going to get 8 new patients, get a retention of 25, collect $50 a visit? So first for new patients. So here's the basics. So one is we want to go out and kind of cast a bunch of lines and, you know, prospect for a bunch of fish to get them in the boat. So we're going to do everything. We're going to have an organized plan from the list of everything that we're going to go out and apply and make happen. So again, we're only serving 7 to 10% of the population. When I speak to a new prospect, probably 70% of docs that call that are struggling because they never had enough new patients. So I'd ask them how many would they like to see, and they typically say 25 a month. How many you currently see in 5 or 6? So the 15 that you're not getting, where are they, doc? And ultimately, they figure out that the 15 that they're not getting are outside of their practice. And then I ask them, well, how many hours a week do you spend outside of your practice to go find those people that are outside your practice? And, of course, with those docs, the number one answer is 0 hours. So in terms of marketing, the first thing to accept, while, like, you might not have gone to school to become a marketer, you know, if you're a small business person of any sort, you're a marketer. And even when you're well established, you know, I would argue that you should be spending 6 to 10 hours a week being the marketer. That's the reasonable amount of work. And, right, if you're becoming established, I'd encourage you to be unreasonable. I'd encourage you to spend 30 to 40 hours, you know, of office time ready to see patients, and then another 20, 30, 40 hours of marketing driving in massive numbers of people. If you could drive in 10, 15 people a week, which is doable, you could build, 150 or 200 extra visits a week in 90 days. So it's the unreasonable request. Here's the mindset. This is something else that I think is important. In terms of all of my marketing when I speak to people, right, I want to leave them with the concept that, what they're experiencing is not okay. So at a screening, at a talk, in the grocery line, I was out to dinner with the girlfriend. We were with her brother and wife and her parents. It was the first time, and like the sister-in-law, basically asked what it was that I did. And in the course of conversation, the brothers had a history of back pain. So is to leave that person with the concept, most of them have never had an interaction with chiropractic, is to leave them not with like, you'd be up and crazy if you don't get checked because everybody with back pain gets helped, but that, we've successfully seen lots of people with similar problems, don't know if chiropractic is right exactly for you. What would determine that is a full exam, and you should get examined. And then depending on the situation that you're in, there could be an offer or not. So that's a really important mindset to take out when you're out marketing. So we take that mindset out and we put it into a plan. So that plan ends up looking like, I'm going backwards here, right? But that plan ends up looking like this. So we name the strategy. We have a vision for the strategy. We have a goal for the strategy. We have the measurable tactics that we want to get done in a given period of time. This one is set up for a given month. So that weekly then we drive it by updating it and creating our to-do list so that we can get this stuff done. So it's Thursday night, we're having our meeting, and it's the 2nd of the month, and we see this goal of 30-hour screening. We look at our calendar. Okay, it's all good. We got 8 hours scheduled next week. We have 7 hours the following week. We could schedule 3 or 4 more hours the last week of the month, so we get a to-do. Schedule an additional 4 hours of screening. We're trying to build out 12 retail sites. We've got 8 good sites, right? Try to close 1 more site this week for a first retail screening, right? And so that we're keeping track and we're updating. We build our to-do list based from the plan. So the question is what strategies to focus on? So I would tell you, part of being connected to me and all the other docs in my sphere that are successful, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So work towards what works and work towards your strengths, then work to improve your weaknesses, right? So, we're going to I'll talk about spinal screenings, and like that evokes a lot of different emotions. So I would tell you that you don't ever need to do a spinal screening, right? But you need to spend the 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a week doing whatever it is that you're going to be doing successfully and to plan for it. And if you're going to do it, you may as well look at what's worked for others at the right exchange. So one, I want to push, everyone should be focused, a Kaizen mentality of small improvements ongoingly. Everybody should be focused on improving your web presence. So all of us should be you should readily know, maybe even 1 a day. That would be a great target, right? So you could have half of your marketing needs of $1 million practice fulfilled if you did the web fully and rightly. So this list, like all of these lists, is not exhaustive. It's just some suggestions on where to start. So a uniform presence so that your full name, address, phone numbers, everything is uniform down to like street is either ST period, ST no period, or STREET, so that it shows up everywhere on the web the same way, so that when anybody ends up searching for you, it all drives back to you. 2 would be checking out, creating a website for the practice. Certainly that would be important. And then having search engine optimization considered while you're building the web pages. So while the website is being constructed, you could have your community chiropractor built into the design so that when people are searching that term, it has a higher chance of showing up. How are we going to use social media? How are you going to use email? Right? So like everything else that's sold online, part of it is grown by the list of emails that you have. So, I talk about this a lot, and, it would be really worth thinking through. So there are different lists of people that I kind of want to send messages to, and perhaps different sets of messages kind of forever. Certainly anyone that's anyone that's currently being checked and adjusted. Right, so there's a chance to be sending them all kinds of resources to further their education on what it is that they're receiving and top of mind consciousness and breadth of chiropractic. Anybody that's referred anybody, right? Any of our marketing partners, perhaps, right? So you could develop a birthday list. There is a endless amount of lists and emails that we could be using to promote and market the office. Certainly, pay-per-click campaigns, if you are so designed to manage that, can you make Google and other pay-for ads work for you? There are pay-per-call, chiropracticappointment.com, $40 a call. They record the calls, and I've gotten a bunch of new patients from them in addition to being able to actually hear the recorded calls, which is good. Having your own video channel online, whether it's through your own website or YouTube or some other hosted place, it's relatively easy after you jump through the first couple of hoops of figuring it out to be able to get a ton of videos up on the net, or even asking patients to produce testimonial videos. And we talked a little about list building as well. We should be looking to grow our list. You should have a number. How many good emails do you have on your list? And you should know what that number is, and then next month it should be more. So the web is one strategy. Spinal Screenings is another strategy. So this was the actual picture that the iPod took. The software would allow us to put in the plumb lines. You probably, if you'd stop to see it, this guy's hips are bad. His actual leg is bowed. And this is just a random guy that I just picked off of a roll randomly, and it illustrates the great point that structurally just about everyone we interact with has a problem. So going through and becoming very proficient in spinal screenings, because it's going to show up in different places, at retail screenings or even corporate screenings. So in retail screenings, as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to be developing 12 sites that I can go to on a quarterly basis. So if I had 12 sites, I could go there 4 times a year. If it was a gym, for example, within each 4 times, I might go 2, 3, 4 times to get all of their public. Like I might go in the mornings on a Monday or on a weekend afternoon or on a Wednesday night, or like the 3 times that they're going to be busiest that aren't likely to overlap, right? So I might do that. Then once I have my 12 in place, I'd like to look to kind of lose the least producer. So whichever one is kind of the least best place, I'd like to find a new place that, like, the new place might be 5th best, but number 12 still disappears. So in any retail setting, I need to be able to justify going out, spending all the time to do it. I need to be able to get a return. So in my mind, I need to be able to screen 4 people, so 2 sign up, so 1 person actually shows up for every hour that I'm at a place. So if I'm going to a place for 4 hours and I don't think that I can screen 16 people, I want to look at that kind of askant or with a raised eyebrow and maybe not do that. So with the stores, like everything else, the better the relationship, typically the better the results, because we'll have better access, better location, better in-store promotions, and some people will do just about anything that we ask them, which can really change the result of a retail screening. So again, not exhaustive gyms, vitamin shops, mattress stores, mall kiosks, anywhere where we're going to be out screening the public. So still effective, still big practices built by it. I've kind of switched more to the whale hunting concept. So the differentiation in my mind is in whale hunting, we're working with companies with their employees so that we get highly qualified new patients. I know where they work, so it's close enough to get to me. I know what their insurance is, or at least they're getting a paycheck, so I know that they can pay me. And if they're at work, they're probably stressed. And if they're interacting with me at a wellness event, they probably have an issue. So they've essentially pre-qualified just by showing up. So in terms of whale hunting, right, and I have a whole hour on that, and those of you that have been around know what I'm talking about, the accountability is to get those 10 movements a week. So again, like, on the wall in your office it says you're a doctor. But in order to be a super successful business person, these have to get done. First by you, and once you master them, then you can coach, manage, and have it done and hire for it. But if you own it and you understand it and you can build the relationships, why we whale hunt is so that we can eat forever. So this picture that I showed you was taken inside the nuclear facility. We just finished the 2nd year of doing 20 hours a year during their big biometric health fair, and, probably a total of 100 new patients in the door from the 2 years. So that's one relationship, and we're able to do that over and over so we can eat forever. So networking is also important. Go into a leads group or a chambers of commerce or a cause group or even virtual online stuff. And again, when networking, not only am I looking for patient referrals, but the biggest leads that I'm looking for, I want to get plugged into all the other companies to do this stuff, the whale hunting. So again, the visual I have is in the right networking group is somebody that sells payroll, the payroll salesperson. All day long, they're calling on people that can say yes to payroll services. They can also say yes to wellness services. So if we became buddies with the payroll salesperson, we could get hand-delivered into companies that we would not have access to otherwise. That's just one type of relationship when I think about networking. That's what I think about. Right? So again, having this written plan as a homework assignment, I would ask for each office to send me their current and December written plan. So this becomes the checklist. So I would ask you, and again, all of you are kind of knee-deep in it. So if we had 10 movements on the whale hunting spreadsheet a week, had 3 corporate events, scheduled 5 events during the month, and had 10 meetings, and we screened 30 hours, had 12 sites planned out. We screened 80 people, and we really knew what we were doing on the iPad. And we added 4 testimonials and 15 postings to Facebook and 4 online reviews and our first video. And we had our first MD meeting and put 20 MDs in the play to try to meet with and develop the briefing or what we would show MDs. And if we created 5 ambassadors for the practice, and this wasn't an exhaustive list, but it was close to it, I think there were 2 more strategies. If we did these things, would we achieve these numbers? And the answer is probably, not necessarily, but probably. And if we didn't, we then just debug it. So we screened 30 hours and we only got 8 new. Well, what did it look like? How did we screen? What's our screening script? What locations were we at? Right? But if you stay at it, you can make these numbers definitely hit. And this is the plan for $1 million practice. So it's 40 or 50 new a month of tortured spines, of people that are highly symptomatic, and we make that happen. So that's our marketing, right? So now we got to build PVA. Again, if you're having 30 new a month already and your PVA is in the teens, this is an area to focus on, and maybe lots of times people don't talk about it. So in my system, there's only 5 things I do to patients. Day 1, day 2, regular office visits, re-exam, re-report, and a lay lecture. If your intake is a 3-day, then you have 6 things, and if it's a 4-day, you have 7 things, but typically those are the only choices. So we want to master these patient contacts, and that's how you drive PVA. So first is kind of accepting that there is a standard operating procedure, a scripting, if you will. When you go see Hamlet, kind of no matter how it's presented, it's coming down to be or not to be. That is the question. Right? So just like the report of findings is, it's bad and it's serious and it's causing you to feel the way that you do. Now, I like my scripts. I know that my scripts, if you use my scripts, you could definitely build a PVA of 25. I know that because dozens of employee associates and hundreds of clients have been able to pick up those scripts from wherever they are and boom, right to 25. Lots to way more than that. But, you know, they're not the only scripts, and if you know that your scripts are fine as well, that's fine, but I would encourage you to hold yourself to a standard. So what does your day 1 look like? What does your day 2 look like? So scripting provides security, consistency, momentum, ease in training, testable results, and it shows everybody that there's a correct way. So again, you know, most PVAs that are down in the teens, day 1 and day 2, if you went back and kind of broke it apart, decomposed it, look at all the pieces and fixed it, your PVA would double. Here's a mindset. It's my marriage mindset. The spinal screening or the health fair is the speed date. The first visit on a reduced or no fee is the first date. Relief care is socially going out. Corrective care is going steady. And then ongoing lifetime supportive care is when you get married. So to some extent, the question becomes is how many patients did you ask to marry each month? And if we had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these people that actively, you know, decided to, yes, I'll marry you, and here's my visits for the next 12 months, once a month, twice a month, once a week, right? You would grow the back half of your practice, and you would have half kind of active care and half supportive care, and this is where PVA is, you know, monster PVA is built. So just in your head real quick, imagine what kind of practice you'd have if your PVA was 50. So same number of new and a PVA of 50, right? And a lot of that is in the back end. So day one, we're the doctor that knows the most and cares the most, 12 steps, the pre-call, the greeting, the paperwork, escorting the patient, the pre-consult, the consult, the post-consult, the exam and play-by-play in color, conversion to x-rays, x-rays, first day release, first day care if acute, right? So in those, all those little steps, right, there's probably something that when I just went through that, you know, every one of you cringed just a little bit. Like I said conversion to x-rays, and like, you know, there might be someone that doesn't even know what that is, or like, yeah, I stopped doing that, or any of these. So it's to go back and to really get those basics in, and it's repeated time after time, 500 times a year, day one, 500 times a year, day two, right, to treating an acute patient on day one. Then in between day one and day two, maybe the most important time really in working up the case, the clinical workup, the financial workup, the admin workup, the mental workup, all the paperwork's in place. And I want to highlight here the mental workup is to take the time to see yourself with that patient in successful relationship, weeks, months, years down the road. What we can see, what we believe, we can achieve. So it's to take that time. Now, you know, in truth in lending, right, I will tell you that there were many reported findings where I went in and, like, I remember doing the history, but, like, the exam and the x-rays were done and marked up by somebody else, and now I'm back in doing the report of findings, like, and I haven't even looked at it. What kind of report of findings can I deliver doing that? So, you know, really having a clear understanding, having all the paperwork ready, having a clear picture of what's going on, and to be able to deliver that report of findings, and then people just say, okay, doc, yeah, that makes sense. When can I get started? I'll just prepay you. Right, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 12 weeks? Okay, I'll rearrange my schedule if it's that serious. Right, and that's how we grow practices so that, you know, when we go into the report of findings room, we're on fire and we understand what's going on, and that patient's going to get it. And in fact, if they don't, they typically never will. So we carry that responsibility as well. So day two protocol, the report of findings, the care schedule, the financial consultation, right? So regardless of whether you as the doc do it, which is still the way I recommend it, or you have staff do some of these steps, and some of you do that exceptionally well, right? It should be done in a standard and repeatable way, and like showing the patient how to use the office, how to sign in. They still fill out their travel card, hopefully in my offices. And, you know, one-stop front desk, and I use jump seats, and here's what that means, and all that stuff. And, you know, the first adjustment and first therapy, of course, are very critical. So we want to make sure that we have all the tools that we need. Ideally, you should be able to do a full new patient or full report of findings in at least either of 2 rooms. So whatever tools it are that you use during both day 1 and day 2, you should have fully outfitted so that you have ready access to them in either of 2 rooms, which will unlock some capacity issues. Right? The 3 phases of care chart, have it visible, have it readily accessible, have it at eye level so it's easy to go over with people. Again, there are other charts that can replace this one. If you have another chart that shows kind of like, you know, the care, the path of care, so whatever it is, but, you know, it's where you need it. You have enough of them. You can go through it. You can tell the story to people, right? The first adjustment call, another in the PVA column, it's a highly unexpected service. Almost all of them are super positive experiences. So this kind of gets moved a little bit. So in the PVA, right, so here's all the things that end up happening for PVA. So now the third column is driving your OVA. So again, if 50 is not your number, if you're going for 65, even better. So kind of all the things to do, right? I guess I did jump ahead. So regular office visits, just to go back, so this is still under PVA. This is an area that perhaps we don't really think about that much. But the bulk of every patient's visit is going to be these regular office visits. So we really want to have that templated. People should get used to coming in and kind of servicing and getting out of the office. It should be friendly, it should be fun, but there should be a routine. They come in, they sign in. You know, if you're doing exercises with the patients first, they do that. How the doctor picks them up and checks them, adjusts them, whatever therapy or traction or whatever, resting, whatever you're doing after the adjustment happens in an orderly way. They're done. They've done all the paperwork already at the front desk, and they're out the office, so that we can have a doctor's turn in certainly 3 to 5 minutes while providing still everything that the patient needs. Doing re-exams either every 10 to 12 visits or every 6 weeks, or certainly on, you know, supportive care patients once a year if they're once a month, to have an update on everyone, to have an outcome assessment. You know, I would really make the re-exams and the re-report of findings a big deal, particularly the first couple, right? So maybe not, I would do the re-exam on a different day, do the re-report maybe even on a different day, go back out and go through the x-rays, go through the functional capacity assessment, and be able to really communicate with the patient where they are. So the vast majority of all patients are going to be driven by pain or lack thereof. So if we need to address that, so I don't believe that we need to ignore that, but after we address that, we then want to address the functional component. And a lot of people are receptive to it once we've delivered what they came looking for. They'll be able to hear and want what it is that's best for them. So really important. Lastly, the MPOC. Again, if I would tell you that there's lots of massive practices that are built solely on this strategy. It's the doctor's commitment. In those practices, you don't become a new patient and not come to the class. The doctor's so high on the commitment that, as a result, people end up coming to the class. The commitment, when we're going to ask for it at the report of findings, we're going to keep a list at the front desk. You know, if you haven't been super strong on this, then everyone else is also able to be invited. So if somebody is asking questions, or if somebody's had a particularly good result, if you'd like them to share their story, or it's someone that, you know, you have a better energy with, that you want them to be in the room, we invite them to the class. So we can do the MPOC, we can do different symptom talks, we can do a dinner with doc talk. You know, you could even do it kind of in a teleclass format. So to put together, and, you know, maybe even like Newman-wide, we could invite all patients to like the master NPOC. So, you know, what we can do is kind of limitless. So that's the PVA side. Now on the OVA side, right? So again, one-stop front desk, map cards, batch booking, fully understanding our payment scheme, whether it's insurance or patient payment plans, what stats should we have, managing staff. So all of the paperwork, if you don't go back and inspect your files, whether they're digital or still on paper, I can assure you that there's stuff missing. So whether it's in a patient file, the entrance form, the care summary sheet, the finances, the treatment plan, the clinical treatment plan, or in the office, the sign-in sheet, the day sheet, the posting sheet, daily stats, if you don't see it, there's big gaps. So, you know, this becomes exposed when you get the audit letter. If we just do it right, we can become bulletproof to some significant extent. Not impenetrable, but kind of way extra layers of protection. Patient payment plans, you know, we want to basically extend credit to anyone that asks for it, lay out the terms, give them the 3 options, and then administer it tightly. So if somebody misses their first payment, that's a red flag. We can't continue to service somebody under red flag conditions. They keep making their payments. We give them care. Tons of people will end up in great relationships paying us what they need to pay us. We collect what we need to collect from the insurance company, and we drive our OVA up, right? Again, paper or digital travel card, having that information about the patient when we're seeing the patient, the clinical, right? So I would still adjust off of listings. How do you adjust if you don't see the listings, like you can't remember every patient's? The demographics, kids and where they work, and looking to ask about referrals, education, so we know how to kind of talk to that person, administratively making sure they got a map, that they're current on their payment plan, that any other customer service needs are being met, that one-stop front desk, so it's all going down. So this is kind of like another OVA driving thing, is looking at how to set up your day. So this could be a morning. So this is batch booking. 8 regulars followed by a new patient, followed by 8 regulars, followed by a report of findings. followed by 8 regulars, followed by 2 marketing new patients, followed by 8 regulars, followed by an ROF. Boom, then it's lunch. So you flew through the morning, you serviced 8, 16, 24, 32, 34, 35, 36, 37 people. You had 3 new and 2 reported findings. And, that's what Monday morning looked like. So I would encourage you that if this is really what it looked like. And I know there's people on this call right now, they had mornings like that today. In fact, probably some even busier. So if it's not 8, how many would it be? And as you expand, if you have multiple docs, then what's your capacity? You could do a new patient or report every half hour on top of 8, 10, 12 regulars. So it's really looking at that to break through capacity. And then, again, this is the big appointment book. I'm still a fan of the big appointment book. So I guess I'm softening on this, but all of my offices from day one have always used it. There's over 100 names on this day, morning and afternoon here, and like the book is still 3/4 empty. So it creates this vacuum in which to grow to. So having a kept appointment plan for the patients that do miss, this should actually be you can't control what you can't measure. So knowing who missed, knowing where they are in the flow chart, it's a real simple test, doc. If you haven't been asked to do any of the final missed appointment calls, right, this patient, we called him 3 times, twice, once, we sent him an email, we don't know what's going on, can you call them, then your system's not in place. So, people are disappearing from every practice every week, and if you're not getting asked to call them, then you're not fully controlling it, and that should be a final kind of mental point in your mind as to how your system is. So you could go back, review that, try to tighten up the kept appointment plan. When any of the 20% of the people that cause 80% of the missed appointments show up, can we interact with them and try to extract a stronger commitment? So that really will drive down stress in the practice. The numbers, so I've kept stats like this pretty much every week for over 25 years. So 14 offices every week, and then every combination of current offices that I had, so I could look at it individually. I could look at it from everything that I owned. I could look at it year after year. And, it's kind of interesting to watch the ups and downs, but, I can actually print these side by side and have 20 years worth of weekly stats. So you can't control what you don't measure. It holds all employees accountable. What are the right daily, weekly, and monthly numbers to keep? And you can improve the stats, you grow the business, right? So, again, a mechanical version, so collections, if you improve your secondary billing, you improve your primary billing, you improve your production, you're going to improve your collections. So knowing that. So we get this final written plan, right? So here's our model, 8 new, 25 PVA, $50 a visit, $500,000. Here's where we're getting the news. Here's how we're driving PVA. Here's how we're collecting. And then we go out and we start doing it, and we plan for it on the weekly meeting. We debug the stuff that isn't working, like 3 people in a row say, well, I'll just pay as I go, doc. So for anyone, that should be a red flag. Come up, kind of look at your day 2, your day 1 procedures, how we're bonding with people, how we're presenting the finances, see if anything changed, and we're looking to fix that. Our intention is for people to leave on day 2, committing to the care that they need and committing to paying for their care. I would prefer that they prepay, but I'm not as stuck on that. I guess I would like them to prepay or either commit with credit card for auto payment, auto debit, but I will tell you that I've never actually, there's tons, I've never actually forced that in my offices, and, we probably only get 15 or 20% of people that will do that, and the rest are, we keep track and we ask them for their credit card every month when it's due, but they've committed to it on day 2. So with that being said, I'm going to come up for some air. I would like to hear some takeaways and some actionable steps and the easiest thing for you to add, fix, or correct. So, Ben, a takeaway or an actionable step?
I think the takeaway is kind of what I did last Friday, is just put it up in a way that I can visually see my battle plan and what things are.
Wait 1 second. That was driving me crazy. I'm sorry. Please start again, Ben.
I think it was just that I have a little room. I made my wall kind of my battle plan so I can see it every morning in a large visual, and I can get a picture of, okay, what's my external screens I'm doing, what are my to-dos, and kind of knock them off on there. So it's easy.
So I love it. You're really talking about just being immersed in what it is that you do. right? And, you know, again, falling back in love with the process. So, you know, there's a bunch of moving parts, but at the end, it's this big, viable practice, highly profitable, where we're helping tons of people, you know, in this fight against allopathy. So really well said, which is great. So I'm going to now mute you, Dr. Clayman. A takeaway, something actionable?
Work on PVA.
So what do you think that your PVA could grow by in the next 12 months?
I should be able to double it.
Double it. If you were able to double it, then your practice would double, right? If you could grow your PVA even by 5 visits or 6 visits, typically it's a 20% growth. It's well worth doing. So again, all the little corners that we cut, which on every visit can lead to somebody just deciding that, like, why should I care if the doc doesn't care, or whatever else happens. I'm not saying that happened in your office. I'm just saying, like, you know, whatever it is, you know, to really look, you know, what are the 1, 2, 3 things I can do right now that are the easiest kind of return from my investment, which is cool. Thank you. Dr. Scotty and Nolan?
Yeah, let's see. Scott stepped out. This is Nolan. We got a couple of good ones. We have a meeting with our new marketing person tomorrow. I got some great things that we can do for goal setting.
Great.
In that meeting that we can include on our goals for December, including how to set up our goal sheet, like strategy, vision, goal, tactics, and progress.
Yeah, so like she should come away with that meeting tomorrow with, you know, the marketing plan in place. See, I saved you all these lost slides. There we go. Right, so something like this or her version of this, and then this becomes the checklist. Right, so it's also a very important point in trying to manage a non-DC marketing person. Sometimes they can kind of go astray, lose focus. So I would encourage you to really build in that whatever ends up in this column is only there in order to create this.
Right.
So oftentimes, like, well, I've been very busy. And, like, they have been very busy, and they do a bunch of stuff that might look cool or seem cool, but it doesn't really ever produce new. And then it becomes kind of like a distraction. So you need to guide those actions to make sure that we're generating new patients.
I'm the person to put, yeah, person in that.
Good one. Excellent. Riche, a takeaway? I'm not sure where you are, if you're still on. Maybe you're caller 3.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My takeaway is just really around my patient visit average, my PVA. I've been working on putting together a new care plan because our care plans were 23 visits for 4.5 months. So I'm just been crunching the numbers to get my PVA up.
Awesome. So what do you think you can grow your PVA to in 12 months in a brand new office?
Well, right now it's at 11, and I think in my new office for the first year I should be closer to 16.
Let me erase that in your brain and encourage you just to go to 25.
In your first year you can with as many new patients as you have usually?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
So the average
for some reason
patient,
I thought,
the average patient, how many visits will they need in your mind?
well, it's changing right now. It was 24 plus like monthly.
So how many, so even that number, how many is that? In their lifetime, how many is that?
Like literally or on average?
Yeah, literally.
Probably in the 50s.
Yeah, not in the hundreds or perhaps thousands?
Yeah.
So I'm 5 years down the road. Should I still be your patient?
Yes.
And how often should I see you?
Once a month.
Once a month. So suppose I live for 40 more years. So I'll be turning 90. Is that possible?
Yeah.
All right. I've adjusted many people that were over 100. So we're talking hundreds of visits as the clinical demand. So, like, getting to 25 makes sense. And, like, your original plan will be strong enough to grow to 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Very good. Teddy et al. Takeaways, Cody, Mary?
Yeah, what I liked about today was like it put together a lot of different parts, and so like a lot of times we talk about them in their smaller pieces, but put them all together so you see like why it all goes was really cool. And having intention and really understanding the relationship with the patient and like where it's going to go, like understanding that before you get going with them, I think that's really important.
I think that it's critically important, particularly for the new young docs, right, is to visualize that patient like saying yes, doing well under care, becoming a raving fan. And all of us will grow that flock. It's a very important point, Teddy. Thanks. So as always, I'm excited. Thanks for coming up on the top of the hour. It's going to conclude the recording. I'll stay on for any final Q&A. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys. Have a good Thanksgiving. And enjoy your families. Don't eat too much. And I will talk to you guys next week.